I know this is hard, but you need to know who she was.
This is your mother.
Why now?
Michael sat quietly in the living room, staring at the empty spot on the shelf where Sarah's necklace had always rested. It had been a few years since his beloved wife passed, and the memories of her still lingered in every corner of their house. The necklace was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of love, of the life they had shared, and the family they had built. Every time Michael looked at it, he felt a mixture of sorrow and warmth. He could almost hear Sarah's soft voice reminding him to smile and live for the family she loved so much. Emily, his 15-year-old daughter, burst into the room with a bright smile plastered on her face. "Dad, guess what? I've got this amazing plan for summer," she said, nearly bouncing with excitement. Michael looked up from the empty shelf, immediately noting her energetic, almost frantic demeanor. "I'm listening," he said cautiously. He had learned over the years that Emily's ideas were often impulsive and self-centered. "I want to go on a vacation with my friends," she said, waving her phone around. "It's perfect. Sun, beaches, shopping, everything." Michael took a deep breath. He knew exactly what her perfect vacation would cost, and he wasn't ready to finance it. "Emily," he said carefully, "we need to think about priorities. You know we can't just spend money without planning." Emily rolled her eyes dramatically. "Dad, come on. It's just a vacation. It's not like I'm asking for a car." Michael shook his head. "I understand, but this isn't just about money. That necklace, your mom's necklace, has sentimental value. It's not something to sell or trade." Emily's expression hardened. She didn't like being told no. She was tired of feeling restricted and always being reminded of her mother's things. To her, the necklace was just jewelry, and the thought of it helping her achieve what she wanted seemed justified. She left the room, muttering under her breath, but Michael didn't suspect the full scale of what she was planning. A few days later, Michael received a call from a local jeweler, Mr. Collins. "Mr. Johnson," the man said cautiously, "I believe someone came in last week and sold a necklace matching the description you might recognize." Michael's stomach twisted. "Who sold it?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. The man hesitated. "I'm not supposed to give out customer names, but it seems someone who might be close to you." Michael's mind raced. There was only one person it could be, Emily. He felt a sharp pang of betrayal, a mix of shock and anger. How could his own daughter sell something so precious without asking? He didn't confront her immediately. Instead, he decided to observe, to understand her motives. Over the next day, he watched Emily carefully. She strutted around the house with her new confidence, checking her phone constantly, planning her perfect vacation, showing off the money she had received. She was proud of herself, oblivious to the consequences. Michael began devising a plan. He needed her to understand the gravity of her actions without destroying their relationship. Rage mixed with patience, and he knew this would require subtlety, timing, and cleverness. That evening, Michael pretended to be calm. "Emily," he said softly, "can we talk?" Emily looked up, slightly annoyed. "Sure, Dad. What's up?" Michael guided her to the living room, the same room where he had first seen the empty shelf. "Do you remember this necklace?" he asked, gesturing toward a small photograph of Sarah wearing it. Emily's smile faltered slightly. "Yeah, what about it?" Michael took a deep breath. "I heard it was sold recently." Emily's face went pale. I needed the money for a vacation," she admitted quickly. "I didn't think it would be a big deal." Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. He suppressed a sigh, careful not to react too strongly. "It's not the money, Emily. It's the respect for memories, for family, for your mom. That necklace, it meant a lot to me and it meant a lot to her. Selling it, it hurt more than you can imagine." Emily looked down, guilt slowly spreading across her face. I didn't think. I just wanted to go on the trip." Michael nodded slowly. "I understand wanting to have fun. But some things, some treasures, are not for sale. And actions have consequences." Over the next few days, Michael began his subtle revenge plan. He didn't want to be cruel. He wanted Emily to learn a lesson. He called Jake, his trusted neighbor, for advice and assistance. Together, they devised small obstacles and inconveniences for Emily's vacation plans. Nothing dangerous, just clever manipulations that would frustrate and confuse her, forcing her to confront the impact of her selfishness. First, Michael secretly cancelled some of her hotel reservations under the pretense of booking errors. Emily was frustrated when she discovered them but blamed the online system, unaware that her father had orchestrated it. Then, he arranged for her luggage to be slightly delayed, creating a mild panic without attracting suspicion. Emily's confidence began to waver. She had expected the trip to be smooth and glamorous, but the series of small disruptions made her realize that not everything in life could be manipulated to her will. Michael also used subtle psychological tactics. He occasionally left small notes around the house, mimicking the handwriting of Emily's mother. They contained gentle reminders about respect, patience, and family. Emily found them occasionally, shivering slightly at the feeling of being watched, unsure who had left them. Meanwhile, Michael continued observing Emily, noting how her impulsiveness and selfishness affected her planning. Each minor failure built her awareness slowly. He never confronted her harshly. Instead, he let the consequences unfold naturally. The day before Emily's intended departure, Michael received a call from Mr. Collins, the jeweler. "Mr. Johnson, there's something you should know," he said. "The necklace that was sold, it appears to be a fake. Someone gave it away thinking it was real, but it isn't. I thought you should know before anyone else finds out." Michael's mind raced. The revelation added a new layer to his plan. Emily would not only learn the consequences of her actions but also the reality of her impulsive decision. He smiled quietly. It was the perfect lesson in responsibility and humility. That evening, Michael sat with Emily again, pretending to be calm. "I heard from the jeweler today," he said softly. "The necklace, it's not real." Emily's face twisted in confusion and panic. "Wait, what?" she asked, her voice trembling. Michael nodded gently. "Yes. You sold it thinking it was valuable, for a vacation. But in reality, it was worthless. The money you got, it wasn't from something real. And your actions, they still hurt. That's the lesson." Emily stared at him, stunned. She hadn't anticipated this outcome. She realized the depth of her mistake, the recklessness of her decision, and the intelligence of her father. Michael remained calm, his expression soft but firm, ensuring the lesson was received clearly. Over the next few days, Michael guided Emily carefully, helping her undo some of the consequences. She had to explain to friends that her vacation plans had failed, that the money was gone, and that her impulsiveness had caused problems. Humility and regret slowly settled in, reshaping her understanding of responsibility and respect for others. Through subtle observation, careful orchestration, and clever manipulation, Michael had taught Emily a valuable lesson. She had learned that actions have consequences, that memories and respect cannot be traded, and that clever planning often outweighs impulsiveness. By the end of the week, Emily was genuinely remorseful. Michael, satisfied with her growth, decided to reward her humility. He secretly purchased a real replacement for Sarah's necklace and gifted it to Emily, but only after she had learned her lesson. It was a symbolic gesture, emphasizing trust, growth, and responsibility. Sitting together in the living room, Michael watched Emily carefully hold the necklace, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. I understand now. I won't make that mistake again." Michael smiled warmly. "I know you won't, Emily. And that's what matters." As the sun set over their quiet neighborhood, Michael felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction. His daughter had learned an unforgettable lesson, and his late wife's memory had been honored. The necklace, both symbol and treasure, had taught a story of responsibility, consequences, and clever planning. The week had been a test of patience, observation, and subtle strategy, and Michael had succeeded. He had preserved family honor, taught an important lesson, and strengthened the bond with his daughter, all without anger or cruelty. Emily looked at her father, understanding the depth of his wisdom, and Michael looked back, proud of her growth. Sometimes, he thought, the best lessons are learned not through punishment, but through clever guidance and gentle consequences. And in that quiet living room, with the necklace shining softly in Emily's hands, Michael knew that his daughter would never forget this lesson, and neither would he. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, painting soft golden stripes across the living room. Michael awoke early, as he always did, enjoying the quiet before Emily stirred. The events of the past few days had left him both exhausted and satisfied. Emily had begun to understand the gravity of her actions, but he knew that subtle reinforcement was necessary. Lessons learned too quickly were often forgotten. He moved silently through the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Every plate, every cup, and every napkin was placed with precision, a subtle continuation of his plan. Today, he thought, would be another opportunity to teach Emily responsibility, patience, and respect. By mid-morning, Emily emerged from her room, rubbing her eyes and yawning. She appeared calm on the surface, but Michael could see the tension beneath. Her mind replayed the events of the previous days, the failed vacation plans, the sudden realization that the necklace was fake, the embarrassment she had faced among friends. She had begun to understand, but Michael's careful strategy was far from over. "Good morning, Emily," he said, smiling warmly. "Sleep well?" Emily shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "I guess." Michael nodded, his expression gentle but calculating. "I thought we could go over your plans for the weekend. I know you've been thinking about a short trip." Emily's shoulders tensed. She didn't know whether to feel excitement or dread. The memory of the previous failed vacation attempt lingered painfully. As they ate breakfast, Michael spoke casually, sprinkling in subtle lessons. "You know," he said, "planning and preparation are important. Even small details can make a huge difference in how events turn out." Emily nodded, trying to appear attentive, but Michael noticed her nervous glances toward the hallway mirror. She was beginning to feel the effects of his subtle psychological guidance, the awareness that her actions had consequences extended beyond immediate punishment. After breakfast, Michael suggested that Emily accompany him to the local bank to deposit some money she had saved. The errand was simple, but he had arranged for small obstacles to test her patience and decision-making skills. First, he intentionally caused a minor mix-up with the paperwork. Emily had to carefully review the forms, catching errors she might have otherwise overlooked. Frustration built, but she had to manage it calmly or risk embarrassment. Next, Michael led her through a detour caused by unexpected construction, requiring careful navigation and cooperation. Emily's impatience flared, but she remembered the lessons from the past few days. She bit her lip and focused on staying composed, realizing that complaining would solve nothing. Throughout the day, Michael continued to weave subtle lessons into everyday events. A missing item in the pantry, a slightly delayed delivery, even a gentle misplacement of her school backpack, all minor disruptions designed to reinforce the consequences of carelessness. Emily grew increasingly aware of how easily her plans could unravel without careful thought. By afternoon, Michael escalated the lessons further. He introduced a new element, responsibility. He asked Emily to help organize some of her mother's old belongings, including personal items she had never touched before. As she sorted through letters, photographs, and small keepsakes, the weight of her impulsive actions became even more apparent. She realized that by selling the necklace, she had disregarded not only its monetary value but also the memories and love it represented. Michael observed silently, guiding her gently when necessary. "Emily," he said softly, "each of these items tells a story. It's important to treat them with care, even if we don't fully understand their value at first glance." Emily nodded, eyes glistening with unshed tears. The reality of her mistake had sunk in fully now. She felt both shame and a growing appreciation for the careful planning her father had orchestrated. Later, Michael introduced another layer to the lesson, humility. He suggested that Emily call her friends and explain the situation regarding her failed vacation plans. At first, she resisted, embarrassed by the thought of admitting her mistakes. But Michael remained calm and supportive. "Being honest about our mistakes," he explained, "shows strength, not weakness." Reluctantly, Emily made the calls. She stumbled through her explanations, but each conversation reinforced the lesson. Friends were understanding, but she could sense the respect she had lost due to her impulsive decisions. Michael watched quietly, proud of her gradual growth. As evening approached, Michael set the stage for a reflective moment. He invited Emily to sit with him on the porch, overlooking the garden Sarah had loved so much. The warm glow of the setting sun bathed the scene in soft light, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze created a peaceful backdrop. "Emily," Michael said gently, "what did you learn today?" Emily paused, struggling to articulate her thoughts. I learned that I can't just do whatever I want without thinking about others. And that my actions, even small ones, can have big consequences. Michael smiled, a mixture of pride and relief washing over him. Exactly. And it's not just about mistakes. It's about understanding the value of things, the memories behind them, and the people who care about us. Emily nodded, feeling the weight of the day's lessons. She glanced down at her hands, recalling the necklace she had sold so impulsively. The guilt was still there, but now it was accompanied by understanding. She realized that her father's careful guidance had taught her more than any lecture could. Over the next few days, Michael continued to reinforce the lessons subtly. He allowed Emily small freedoms but ensured that each choice carried responsibility. Minor inconveniences, delayed plans, and gentle reminders of her mother's values all contributed to her growing maturity. Meanwhile, Michael discovered additional insights from Mr. Collins, the jeweler. The fake necklace Emily had sold had been part of a collector's set designed to look real, and the money she received was considerably less than she had believed. This revelation added a final layer to the lesson. Impulsive decisions often lead to unintended consequences. Michael carefully revealed this to Emily one evening, choosing his words with precision. "You see, Emily," he said softly, "sometimes things aren't as they seem. We need to be patient, thoughtful, and cautious. Rushing into decisions can lead to disappointment, or worse, regret." Emily's eyes widened as she realized the full scope of her actions. She had not only disrespected her mother's memory but had also misjudged the true value of what she had sold. The lesson was complete, but Michael knew that reinforcement was key. He continued to provide gentle guidance, allowing Emily to reflect on her choices and grow from the experience. By the end of the week, Emily's behavior had shifted noticeably. She was more thoughtful, patient, and aware of the impact of her actions. She approached her father with a newfound respect and understanding, ready to make amends. Michael, satisfied with the progress, decided to introduce the final gesture of trust and love. He revealed that he had secretly purchased a replacement necklace, real, beautiful, and symbolic of Sarah's memory, but he would only give it to Emily once she had fully internalized the lessons. This subtle anticipation reinforced the importance of responsibility, patience, and respect. As the week closed, Michael reflected on the events. He had orchestrated a careful balance of observation, subtle consequences, and guided reflection. Emily had learned that actions carry weight, that impulsive choices can have far-reaching effects, and that respect for family and memory is priceless. Sitting quietly on the porch one last evening, Michael watched the sun dip below the horizon. Emily joined him, a quiet smile on her face, and together they sat in companionable silence. The lessons had been hard, but they had been effective. Emily's growth was evident, and Michael felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He whispered to himself, a soft smile crossing his face, "Sometimes, the best lessons are the ones learned quietly, through reflection, patience, and careful guidance. And sometimes, a little clever planning is all it takes." The forest outside was calm, the wind gentle through the trees. Michael knew the journey was not just about a necklace or a vacation, it was about growth, understanding, and the enduring strength of family bonds. And in that quiet moment, he felt certain that Emily would never forget this week, nor the lessons it had taught. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, casting a golden hue across the living room. Michael sat quietly in his usual chair, sipping his coffee, while Emily prepared for another day. Though she appeared calm, there was a subtle tension in her movements, an awareness that the events of the past week had shifted the balance of their household. She had begun to understand the gravity of her impulsive decision, but Michael knew that the lesson was far from complete. He observed her silently, noting the way she hesitated when picking up her schoolbag, double-checked her wallet, and even glanced toward the shelf where her mother's photograph rested. The awareness was there, but it needed reinforcement. Subtlety had been his greatest ally so far, and today, he planned to elevate it. After breakfast, Michael suggested that Emily accompany him to a small errand, visiting the local market to pick up a few necessities. On the surface, it seemed mundane, but Michael had prepared minor obstacles to challenge her patience, decision-making, and humility. The first disruption was subtle, a missing item on the shopping list. Emily scanned the shelves, growing increasingly frustrated as she realized the store did not have the product she had been assigned. Michael remained calm, watching her process the situation. Maybe there's an alternative, he suggested softly. Emily's annoyance flared, but she nodded, recognizing that complaining wouldn't solve the issue. Next, a minor detour delayed their journey. Construction blocked the usual route, forcing Emily to navigate unfamiliar streets. Her impatience bubbled under the surface, but she forced herself to remain composed. She realized that every small inconvenience was a reminder of her impulsiveness from selling the necklace. Michael then introduced a psychological layer. He casually asked Emily to recount the events of the past week, encouraging her to reflect on her choices. Emily hesitated but began to speak, admitting, I shouldn't have sold the necklace. I just wanted the money for the trip, and I didn't think about the consequences. Michael nodded approvingly. Exactly. Actions have consequences, Emily. Sometimes, small mistakes can teach us the biggest lessons. As they continued shopping, Michael subtly guided her through situations that mirrored her previous recklessness. Items she thought were easy to find were deliberately misplaced, forcing her to exercise patience and problem-solving. At one point, a small bag of groceries slipped from her hands, scattering across the floor. She felt a rush of frustration and embarrassment, but Michael's calm demeanor reminded her that mistakes were opportunities to learn. After returning home, Michael introduced another layer to the lesson: responsibility. He asked Emily to help organize her mother's personal belongings, including letters, photographs, and keepsakes she had never handled before. Each item carried a memory, a story, and a subtle reminder of the consequences of disrespecting what others hold dear. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she sorted through the collection, the weight of her impulsive actions pressing heavily on her conscience. While Emily worked, Michael orchestrated additional challenges. He arranged for minor household mishaps: a flickering light, a chair slightly out of place, a misplaced key, each designed to test her attention to detail, patience, and humility. Emily began to feel the cumulative effect of the past week: the failed vacation, the realization that the necklace was fake, and now these small, deliberate challenges that mirrored her impulsiveness. By afternoon, Michael escalated the tension further. He suggested that Emily call her friends to explain why her vacation plans had failed. At first, she resisted, embarrassed by the idea of admitting her mistakes. But Michael's calm insistence encouraged her to proceed. Each call was a lesson in humility, patience, and responsibility, reinforcing the consequences of her impulsive actions. Emily's anxiety grew as she realized the full scope of her mistakes. The friends she had hoped to impress now listened patiently, but she could sense the disappointment and subtle judgment in their reactions. Michael watched quietly, noting every expression, every hesitation, every sign of her growing awareness. Later, Michael introduced the final psychological element of the day: anticipation. He reminded Emily that a special package had arrived from Mr. Collins, the jeweler. The package was a simple envelope, unassuming but heavy with significance. Emily's curiosity and apprehension were piqued. Michael handed it to her casually, watching her hands shake slightly as she opened it. Inside was a receipt and a note. The receipt showed the sale of the necklace, including the amount received. The note read, "True value is not always monetary. Lessons are priceless." Emily stared at the note, a mix of shock, guilt, and dawning understanding washing over her. She realized that her impulsive actions had consequences far beyond what she had anticipated. Michael spoke softly, reinforcing the lesson. "Emily, it's not about punishment. It's about understanding the value of our actions and the memories we share. Selling that necklace was careless, but it taught you something important." Emily nodded, tears forming in her eyes. The lesson had been difficult, but it was sinking in. She began to comprehend the depth of her father's subtle orchestration, the way he had guided her through frustration, embarrassment, and reflection without ever raising his voice. As evening approached, Michael suggested they sit together on the porch. The setting sun cast long shadows across the garden, a serene backdrop for reflection. Emily held the receipt and note in her hands, contemplating the events of the day. "Dad, I understand now," she whispered. "I shouldn't have done it. I was selfish, and I didn't think about Mom or you." Michael smiled gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know, Emily. That's why I guided you through these experiences. True understanding comes from realizing the consequences ourselves, not just being told what to do." Over the next few days, Michael continued subtle reinforcement. Minor disruptions, guided responsibilities, and reflective discussions kept Emily aware of her impulsiveness and encouraged patience, humility, and thoughtfulness. She began approaching decisions with care, checking details, and considering the impact of her choices on others. The cumulative effect was profound. Emily's behavior transformed. She apologized to friends, managed her time and money responsibly, and showed newfound respect for her father's guidance and her mother's memory. Michael observed quietly, satisfied that the lessons were sinking in deeply. Then came the final stage of the plan. Michael revealed that he had secretly purchased a real replacement necklace for Sarah, keeping it hidden until he felt Emily had fully internalized the lessons. The anticipation reinforced the importance of responsibility and patience, as Emily realized that rewards were meaningful only when paired with maturity and understanding. When Michael finally presented the necklace, Emily's hands trembled. Tears filled her eyes as she held the beautiful piece of jewelry, recognizing not only its physical beauty but the deeper significance behind the gesture. "Dad. I understand now," she said softly. Michael smiled warmly. "I know you do, Emily. And that's why I trust you now. The necklace is more than just jewelry, it's a symbol of growth, responsibility, and the lessons we've learned together." As the sun set over their quiet neighborhood, father and daughter sat together in companionable silence. The week's events had been challenging, emotional, and transformative. Emily had learned the value of patience, humility, and responsibility. Michael had guided her with careful observation, subtle consequences, and gentle reinforcement. The story of the necklace had begun with betrayal and impulsiveness, but it ended with understanding, growth, and renewed bonds. Emily would never forget the lessons learned during this week, and Michael knew that his subtle orchestration had achieved exactly what he intended, a clever, lasting, and meaningful lesson in the value of actions, respect, and family. The quiet evening held a sense of closure, but also anticipation. Michael knew that Emily had grown, but life would continue to present challenges. And he was confident that the lessons she had learned, the careful observation, patience, and responsibility, would guide her through every future decision. As they watched the sun dip below the horizon, Michael whispered softly to himself, "Sometimes, the best lessons come quietly, without anger, but with careful guidance and clever planning. And sometimes, those lessons are unforgettable." Emily leaned against her father, holding the replacement necklace close. The past week had been a test of patience, humility, and understanding. She had failed, reflected, and grown. And in that moment, both she and Michael knew that the bond between them had strengthened, built on lessons learned, trust regained, and love reinforced. The quiet house, the fading sunlight, and the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees served as a reminder. Life's lessons, when delivered thoughtfully and cleverly, could transform mistakes into wisdom, impulsiveness into responsibility, and betrayal into growth. And Emily, holding the necklace that now symbolized so much more than just its material value, had learned that lesson fully, and would carry it with her forever. The morning air in the Johnson household felt heavier than usual. Michael sat at the kitchen table, stirring his coffee slowly, while Emily moved quietly about the house. Over the past few days, the lessons had been building, shaping Emily's understanding, but today Michael knew it was time to deliver the final part of his plan. Emily sensed it too. She moved cautiously, her eyes darting toward her father every few moments. The tension in the air was palpable. Though she had learned patience, humility, and responsibility, there remained an unease she couldn't quite place, a feeling that her father had more in store. Michael finally spoke. "Emily, we need to talk." His voice was calm but carried a weight that demanded attention. Emily sat across from him, folding her hands nervously in her lap. "I know the past week has been challenging," Michael began, choosing his words carefully. "You've experienced consequences, learned about responsibility, and seen how impulsive actions can affect not just you, but others around you." Emily nodded, her gaze fixed on the table. I understand, Dad. I really do. I shouldn't have sold Mom's necklace. I was selfish, and I didn't think," her voice trailed off. Michael leaned forward slightly. "It's not just about understanding. It's about feeling the weight of those actions and realizing their true impact." He stood and walked toward a small box on the counter, placing it in front of Emily. Her curiosity flared, but she also felt a flicker of apprehension. Michael opened the box slowly, revealing a beautiful necklace inside. It glimmered softly in the morning light, every detail shining, a perfect replacement for the one she had sold. This is Mom's necklace?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Michael shook his head slightly. "Not exactly. It's a replacement, yes, but it's more than just jewelry. It's a symbol, Emily. A symbol of the lessons you've learned and the responsibility you now carry." Emily reached for the necklace, her hands shaking. I don't understand. You're giving this to me after everything I did." Michael smiled gently. "Because you've learned, Emily. You've faced consequences, reflected on your actions, and taken responsibility. That's why I trust you with this now." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she realized the depth of her father's planning. The past week had been a carefully orchestrated journey. Every mishap, every delayed plan, every minor embarrassment had been designed to teach her not through punishment, but through reflection and experience. I'm so sorry, Dad," Emily whispered, clutching the necklace. "I was so selfish, and I didn't think about Mom or you. I really understand now." Michael reached across the table, taking her hands in his. "I know you do, Emily. And that's what matters. Mistakes are part of growing up, but learning from them is what shapes who we become." For the rest of the morning, they sat together quietly, reflecting on the events that had transpired. Emily recounted her feelings, the embarrassment, the frustration, the anxiety, and finally the understanding she had gained. Michael listened patiently, nodding occasionally, proud of her growth but still aware that lessons are reinforced through experience. By afternoon, Michael introduced one last element of the lesson: humility in social interactions. He suggested Emily call her friends once more, not to explain a failure, but to share the insight she had gained. "It's important," he explained, "to show that we can grow and change. Being honest about mistakes isn't weakness, it's strength." Emily hesitated at first, but then made the calls. She spoke openly about her impulsiveness, the consequences she had faced, and the understanding she had gained. Friends responded with surprise and encouragement, and Emily felt a newfound respect not only from them, but from herself. As the day drew to a close, Michael and Emily moved to the living room, where the afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting soft patterns on the floor. He guided her through a reflection exercise, asking her to recount the journey of the past week, the initial mistake, the realization, the challenges, and finally the lesson learned. Emily spoke honestly, her voice steadying as she gained confidence. "I sold the necklace without thinking. I thought I was just getting money for a vacation, but I didn't see what I was doing to the memory of Mom or to you. And then, everything started going wrong, and I realized I had to take responsibility. I learned to be patient, to plan, and to respect what matters." Michael nodded, a warm pride washing over him. "Exactly, Emily. That's the essence of growing up. Understanding that our actions have consequences, and that respect and responsibility are priceless." Then came the twist. Michael leaned back slightly, a glint of subtle satisfaction in his eyes. "And now, Emily, the necklace. It's not just a replacement. It's a symbol of trust. You've earned it, not through luck, but through learning, reflection, and growth. Remember that every time you wear it." Emily held the necklace close, feeling the weight not just of the jewelry, but of the lessons it represented. She realized that her father had outsmarted her at every step, not through anger or punishment, but through careful observation, subtle guidance, and clever orchestration. The day ended with a quiet sense of closure. Michael had delivered the final lesson, Emily had internalized the teachings, and the bond between father and daughter had strengthened. The story of the necklace, once a tale of betrayal and impulsiveness, had transformed into one of growth, responsibility, and understanding. That evening, Michael reflected on the events while watching Emily place the necklace carefully in its box. He knew that the lessons would stay with her, guiding her future decisions and shaping her character. The subtle balance of consequences, reflection, and rewards had achieved what anger never could. Emily, in turn, felt a profound gratitude. She understood now that impulsiveness has costs, that every action matters, and that true growth comes not from punishment, but from guided experience and reflection. As the sun set and the house settled into quiet, Michael whispered softly to himself, "Sometimes, the best lessons are the ones we orchestrate with care, patience, and love." And sometimes, the smartest lessons leave a mark that lasts a lifetime. The calm of the evening contrasted sharply with the turmoil of the past week, yet it was in that calm that Emily truly understood the depth of her father's lesson. The necklace was more than a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of wisdom, trust, and the clever guidance that had transformed a mistake into a lifelong understanding. The following morning, the Johnson household was quiet. The sun rose slowly over the trees surrounding the house, painting the walls with soft golden light. Michael sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, a calm sense of satisfaction in his chest. The past week had been long, filled with tension, lessons, and revelations, but he finally felt that the true purpose of his plan had been achieved. Emily moved carefully about the kitchen, preparing breakfast for herself and her father. She had changed over the past few days. The confidence she had once worn like armor had been tempered with thoughtfulness, responsibility, and humility. Every small action now carried the weight of her reflections. She wasn't perfect, but she was growing, and that was what mattered most to Michael. "Good morning, Emily," Michael said, smiling warmly. "Morning, Dad," Emily replied, her voice steady but soft, carrying the newfound respect and understanding she had gained. They ate breakfast together in a quiet rhythm, the kind of calm that comes after tension has finally eased. Michael watched his daughter closely, noting the subtle ways she paused before making decisions, the way she checked details, the way she considered consequences. The lessons were clearly sinking in. After breakfast, Michael suggested a walk through the small garden Sarah had loved so much. The flowers were beginning to bloom, and the soft rustle of leaves created a peaceful soundtrack for reflection. As they walked, Michael began a gentle conversation about the events of the past week. "Emily," he said softly, "do you remember how you felt the first day we discovered the necklace was gone?" Emily nodded, a faint smile on her lips. "I was scared, Dad. I didn't think about what I had done. I just wanted the money and the vacation." "And now?" Michael asked. "Now," Emily said, her voice stronger, "I understand that my actions affect more than just me. I've learned to think before I act, to respect memories, and to take responsibility for my mistakes." Michael smiled, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. He knew that the journey had been challenging for Emily, but the growth she had shown was real. The subtle lessons, the minor obstacles, the psychological guidance, they had all worked to transform her impulsiveness into careful reflection. As they returned to the house, Michael led Emily to her room. On her desk sat the replacement necklace, carefully placed in its box. Emily picked it up, holding it gently in her hands, feeling the weight of its significance. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a symbol of trust, growth, and the lessons learned through careful guidance. "I want you to remember this," Michael said softly. "Not just the necklace, but everything you've learned. Responsibility, patience, humility, respect, these are lessons that will stay with you for life. And the choices you make from now on will define the person you become." Emily nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I understand, Dad. I really do. Thank you for helping me learn. I know it wasn't easy for you either." Michael shook his head gently. "It wasn't easy for anyone. But the most important thing is that you've learned the value of your actions and the weight of responsibility. That's something no one can ever take away from you." Over the next few days, Emily began to apply the lessons she had learned. She approached schoolwork with more diligence, treated her friends and family with consideration, and handled small responsibilities around the house carefully and thoughtfully. Each action reinforced the lessons Michael had orchestrated, and he watched quietly, proud of her transformation. One evening, as the sun set over the neighborhood, Emily sat on the porch with her father. The replacement necklace lay in her hands, glinting softly in the fading light. She looked at Michael, a mixture of gratitude, respect, and love shining in her eyes. "Dad," she said softly, "I don't think I'll ever forget this week. Everything, the mistakes, the lessons, the consequences, it changed me." Michael nodded, smiling warmly. "I know you won't, Emily. That's the point. Mistakes are part of life, but learning from them, that's what shapes who we are." Emily held the necklace close, feeling its weight and significance. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a reminder of her growth, a testament to the clever guidance of a father who had taught her without anger, without punishment, but with patience, observation, and subtle orchestration. As night fell, the house settled into quiet once more. Emily placed the necklace carefully on her bedside table, reflecting on the lessons learned and the journey she had experienced. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the necklace, but for her father, for his wisdom, and for the love that had guided every step of her learning. Michael, in his own room, reflected quietly as well. The week had been challenging, yes, but the result was worth every careful action, every subtle lesson, every orchestrated consequence. Emily had grown, matured, and learned the value of responsibility and respect. He knew that the lessons would remain with her for life. The next morning, Emily woke with a sense of purpose. She dressed carefully, prepared breakfast, and even helped tidy the house before school. Michael watched from the kitchen, smiling quietly. The change was real, and it filled him with pride. Before leaving for school, Emily turned to her father. "Dad, I want you to know. I'll always remember this week. Not just the mistakes, but everything you taught me. I'll try to be better every day." Michael reached out, taking her hand in his. "I know you will, Emily. And I'll always be here to guide you, to help you learn, and to support you. That's what family is for." Emily smiled, feeling a warmth and security she hadn't felt before. She understood that her father's clever orchestration had been an act of love, and that the lessons she had learned were gifts more valuable than any vacation or material reward. Over the following months, Emily continued to grow, applying the lessons she had learned in school, friendships, and daily life. The story of the necklace became a quiet reminder of the week that had transformed her understanding, guided by a father who had taught through subtlety, observation, and clever planning. Michael watched proudly, knowing that the lessons would last far beyond the immediate consequences. He had turned a mistake into an opportunity for growth, a betrayal into a teaching moment, and a stolen necklace into a symbol of wisdom, trust, and love. As the sun set once more, father and daughter sat together on the porch, reflecting quietly. The journey had begun with selfishness and impulsiveness, had traveled through frustration, humility, and reflection, and had ended with growth, understanding, and a strengthened bond. Michael whispered softly to himself, a quiet smile on his face. "Sometimes the greatest lessons come not from anger, but from patience, subtlety, and love. And sometimes, a single act, carefully guided, can change a life forever." Emily, holding the necklace close, nodded silently, feeling the truth of her father's words. She understood now the weight of responsibility, the importance of respect, and the value of careful reflection. The story of the necklace, once a tale of impulsive mistakes, had transformed into a lifelong lesson, one she would carry with her always. The night grew quiet, the house calm, and the trees swayed gently in the wind. The lessons had been learned. The mistakes had been reflected upon. And the bond between father and daughter had grown stronger than ever, forged through subtle guidance, clever planning, and the enduring power of love.